This week we're working on a feed sack garment, and I wanted to go into a little bit of history before we started on the sewing portion of this project. The use of feed sacks rather than barrels for transportation of certain goods began as early as the 1850s. And while I'm sure families reuse these textiles around the house, the idea to use the fabric from these bags and make them into fashionable clothing rose in popularity during the Great Depression and up until the end of World War II. During these times, companies quickly caught on to this rising trend and started prioritizing prints on their bags as a marketing tool, even going out of their way to print their labels using a removable ink so that the homemaker could easily remove the brand name without turning to their sometimes toxic removal practices, then later by attaching paper labels on the front of the bags. When the country went to war, domestic fabric manufacturing was put on hold while companies created goods for the military. But since feed sacks were considered an industrial textile, they were exempt. Even during the height of rationing, there was no lack of options at the local feed store. In 1944, Sherry Nicholas writes that it's in the bag that new smock you need or pretty pinafore you covet. The bag is the same cotton bag that holds your flour, sugar, salt, and other such commodities, as are packaged in cotton. Best of all is the patriotic spirit you show when you salvage fabrics. With this history of rationing and commodity bags, this is where I'm going to begin my own attempt to make do and mend in 2022. A few months ago, my friends and I announced the World War II sewing challenge. And then I found myself at a thrift store and I found this feed sack. And it seemed meant to be that I should attempt my own repurposed garment using this. Since multiple bags were typically used to make these garments, I went ahead and picked up a few other feed sacks with different prints on them, including one that still had the paper label attached to the front, which was pretty cool. I decided to use this pattern that was already in my stash since I don't have too many 1940s patterns on hand and I didn't want to spend any extra money than I already had. Although just dated after World War II, I should be able to make a few alterations to this pattern and make it work for the guidelines of this challenge. I've cut everything out and this is all that's left except for a large plain piece of this fabric, but it had a lot of damage to it, so I didn't think that I would use it. But I got every piece out of it, including the pocket, and I'm not sure if I'm going to use that or not. My machines are out of commission right now. I have them sitting under here covered up because next week I'm going to focus. Wow. Next week I'm gonna try and take them to the shop to be serviced because they're really struggling to sew. I've never had them serviced, so we're just gonna do it and I'm gonna hand sew this. Here I'm taking the two yoke pieces that I cut out and I am sandwiching the back blouse piece in between them and stitching. A real effort was made to get this kind of cool look with the print without wasting any of the fabric. I I thought this piece was going to be a little more complicated, but it wants you to join the lining piece of the yoke to the front blouse piece. Then you're going to do another sandwich bit and top stitch that down. These sleeves ended up being so simple. I just laid them flat in there, stitched it down, and then did a flat fell seam. So I'm picking back up on this after a few days of not working on it. The side seams are all sewed up now. Got the sleeves put in. Now it's time to add the collar. Since this was a sewing challenge, let's see how I actually did. The blouse rationing guidelines limited the blouse length to less than 22 inches neck to hem, the sleeve width less than 14 inches, less than 5 buttons, and limit 1 pocket with no flap. I was able to meet these rationing restrictions for the blouse by removing 6 inches out of the length of the pattern piece, limiting my buttons, and removing the pocket from the design. Even though I did meet all of those guidelines, I don't believe that all of the top stitching completed on the yoke would fit into rationing guidelines, nor the amount of money that I spent purchasing these not so easy to come by in current day feed sacks. So let me know how you think I did on this World War II sewing challenge.